Success is not about technique. It is about the way you think when nobody is clapping, when the bills arrive, when the market is red, and when your job is quietly being replaced by a system you do not understand. If you have been told that working harder will eventually pay off, you have been trained for comfort, not for wealth. And the proof is sitting right in front of you, in your rent, in your savings account, and in the strange headline that says the economy is fine while your life feels like a slow collapse. This is not financial advice. This is financial education, and it is going to be uncomfortable. In 2026, the rules have shifted again. Artificial intelligence is removing entire categories of middle-class work faster than training programs can replace them. Housing costs keep detaching from wages, so a generation is learning a new skill, accepting permanent renting. Inflation may have cooled on paper, but your purchasing power still feels damaged, because what matters is what your paycheck buys after years of higher prices. Meanwhile, wealth keeps concentrating at the top 1%, and markets keep celebrating highs while ordinary people quietly drown. So in this video, I am going to give you a different mental model of money, not a motivational slogan, a hard framework. We will talk about why the same job, the same effort, the same hours can produce completely different lives. We will talk about how the wealthy think about value, labor, and risk. We will talk about why most people stay poor using the same habits they call discipline. And we will end with one call to action that does not require luck, only clarity, and the willingness to stop lying to yourself. Here is the first painful truth nobody markets well. The wealthy do not win because they are better at technique. They win because their brain is built for a different game. Most people think money is a scoreboard for effort. You work hard, you get paid, you buy things, and if you are disciplined enough, you eventually rise. That story is tidy. It makes life feel fair. It lets you believe that the world rewards virtue. But the world you live in is not a moral machine, it is a value machine. And the people who understand that early enough build systems that convert value into ownership. Everyone else converts value into wages, and wages have a ceiling. Let me tell you a story that is old but still explains every modern tragedy you see online. There is a beautiful village. It has clean streets and warm smiles and a life that looks normal from far away. The problem is water. There is not enough water to support everyone. The village sends out 2 workers. The first worker runs in, grabs a few containers, and heads down to the mountains every day. He hauls water back. He sells it. He earns good money. People cheer him because he is producing something tangible. It is exhausting, but it is clear. You can see the effort. You can measure it. The second worker disappears. Nobody sees him for a while. People start gossiping. They assume he is hiding, or dreaming, or wasting time. Then, one day, he returns with plans. He goes to the city, finds investors, raises capital, hires a crew, drills for water, builds pipes, and installs systems that deliver water into homes. Both workers solved the same problem. One solved it with labor, the other solved it with infrastructure. Now watch the difference. The first worker can work until he is tired. He must rest. The pipes do not need rest. When the second worker finishes the system, he can charge the village, and he can lower the cost because he is not doing every single delivery himself. He is extracting value from a system that scales. When you understand that difference, you understand why your job feels like a treadmill. A job is water hauling. You exchange your limited hours for cash. You can work overtime, but the world still limits you. Your back can only handle so much. Your attention can only be harvested so long. Your employer can replace you with someone cheaper, someone younger, or someone faster. Then they add a software layer on top. And suddenly you are not just hauling water, you are hauling water under a stopwatch while a machine tries to learn your route. This is exactly what AI has done in 2026 in office jobs that used to keep people afloat. Many knowledge workers are discovering that their tasks are not irreplaceable. Their tasks are patterns, and patterns are what machines are best at. So let me ask you something directly. When you hear politicians and pundits talk about retraining, do you ever wonder why the retraining always sounds like a private responsibility, while the corporate profits sound like public destiny? Pattern interrupt. Here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. The economy is not failing. It is transforming. And most people are transforming into lower bargaining power. Your wage is not protected by your effort. It is protected, temporarily, by scarcity. Once scarcity goes away, your hard work becomes cheaper work. That brings us to the second truth. The way the wealthy think about risk is completely different from how the poor think about risk. Most people treat risk like a feeling. They fear losing their job. They fear being wrong. They fear buying something and being embarrassed. They fear uncertainty, and that fear is real, but it is not the whole picture. The wealthy treat risk like a probability and a structure. They ask, what happens if this fails? How fast does it fail? Who absorbs the loss? Can the downside be capped? Can the upside compound? Poor thinking is simple. I must not lose my income. Wealth thinking is also simple. I must build assets that do not require my daily performance. In 2026, you can see this everywhere if you stop watching only income headlines and start watching ownership headlines. Let's talk about housing, because housing is where the dream dies for most people. Years ago, home ownership was marketed as a reward for discipline, save money, improve your credit, buy a starter home, grow equity. That was the story. But for many Americans, Australians, Canadians, and people in the United Kingdom, the story broke. Wages did not keep up. Interest rates rose and stayed higher than many households expected. Insurance in some regions became brutal or unavailable. Construction costs and zoning constraints tightened supply. Meanwhile, investors with deeper pockets bought more aggressively, especially after policy cycles and market squeezes. So you end up with a brutal math problem. If your rent rises faster than your wages, you do not get wealth. You get delayed adulthood. You get trapped. You spend your life paying someone else's mortgage while praying your job stays intact. And AI is making that prayer more expensive because it pressures the jobs that used to offer security. Now, here is the connection nobody makes in a normal conversation. In the wealthy mindset, housing is not only a place to live, it is collateral and cash flow and leverage. In the poor mindset, housing is a cost center. In the poor mindset, you buy a house to escape rent. In the wealthy mindset, you buy assets to escape the need for wages. That is why the same technique advice does not work for everyone. Telling a person who is trapped in wage labor to just be more disciplined ignores the structural difference: ownership versus labor. Let's go deeper into the mindset. The story about the water workers ends with a key detail. When the second worker finishes the system, the first worker tries to survive with more labor. He hires others. But the competition collapses his economics. The union pressures the labor model. The first worker cannot scale. He can only spend his way into more difficulty. Meanwhile, the second worker lies down at home sometimes, because the system generates payments whenever someone turns on the faucet. The value is now automated. And then the second worker does something that separates the top tier from the second tier. He does not stop. He realizes that other villages need water too. So he scales the blueprint. He uses the profit from one infrastructure system to build the next. That is what ownership does. It turns your capital into a machine that reproduces itself. Now think about the creators you see online. Social media makes it look like passive income is a faucet you can turn on with a phone and a camera. But in 2026, many people who monetize content discover a hard truth. Most creators earn almost nothing, and the platform rules constantly shift. The algorithm is not your friend, it is your landlord. Most people are not building assets, they are renting attention, they are converting time into uncertain revenue. That is water hauling with better lighting. So let me make this even more personal. Imagine a nurse named David, 32 years old. David does shift work. David is tired. David follows the advice he was taught. Work hard. Don't complain. Invest in a retirement plan. Keep expenses low. And maybe one day life will reward him. Then a health system adopts AI tools. Not to replace nurses completely, not yet, but to automate scheduling, reduce documentation time, flag cases, streamline intake, and shift tasks. David's job becomes more monitored. His workflow changes. He still does the same human care, but the organization expects more output for the same pay. David tries to learn the system. He tries to keep up, but his bargaining power shrinks because productivity improvements often concentrate savings at the top. David does not become rich because he got a little more efficient. He becomes exhausted because the target moved. Now, notice what did not happen. David did not suddenly start owning machines that pay him when he is off shift. David did not start earning because his capital compounding grew. David is still dependent on selling his time. And that is the trap. You are not lazy. You are not stupid. You were simply given a playbook designed to keep you inside a wage loop. A playbook that is comfortable for governments, comfortable for corporations, and comfortable for anyone who profits from your paycheck staying predictable. Pattern interrupt. Let's talk about the effort versus outcome illusion with numbers. According to Federal Reserve and labor statistics, real wages for many workers in recent years have not fully recovered to pre-inflation purchasing power levels. You can see it in your grocery bills and your insurance premiums and your ability to save. Even when headline inflation cools, the damage lingers because prices settle higher. Meanwhile, major asset classes recover faster than wages. So the rich keep getting richer not because they worked harder, but because their wealth is already positioned in compounding vehicles. The top 1% is not waiting for a bonus. They own income streams and appreciate assets. They borrow against them when it is profitable. They can move capital quickly when rates shift. Ordinary workers cannot borrow against their job security. This is why the market can hit highs while your life feels stuck. It is not a mystery, it is a mechanism. Now let's connect that mechanism to the mindset claim. Change your brain, not your technique. At first, that sounds like self-help, but it is not mystical, it is structural. Your brain controls your interpretation of opportunities. It decides what you notice and what you dismiss. It decides which risks you take and which risks you avoid. It decides whether you chase skills that increase your salary in a job, or you chase skills that increase your ability to own, structure, and control assets. Poor thinking often sounds like this. I need a stable income. I need a career ladder. I need a certification. I need a job that cannot be replaced. We know in 2026 that this is a fantasy. AI does not replace every job instantly, but it replaces tasks. Task replacement reduces the value of your labor. Once enough tasks are automated, the employer can reduce headcount or reduce pay bands. The job title remains, but the bargaining power changes. We also know that in many countries, retirement systems are underfunded. Social Security faces long-term solvency pressure. Pension plans face funding gaps. People are told to delay retirement, then told they are irresponsible for expecting security. This is what makes the mindset so urgent. If the state and the employer are not guaranteeing your future, then only assets can carry you. Only ownership can cushion you against layoffs, AI-driven restructuring, health disruptions, and climate-driven costs. And climate is not just a news topic, it is an economic factor. Insurance markets collapse in some regions. Flood zones become financial death sentences for homeowners. Wildfire risk turns into higher premiums and denied coverage. Migration costs and property value volatility create winners and losers. The wealthy diversify across assets and geographies faster. The poor stay concentrated and exposed. So when someone says, just follow technique, they ignore that the world is no longer stable enough to trust technique alone. Now here is where the script usually gets stuck. People argue about whether capitalism is fair. They argue about whether rich people are evil. They argue about whether exploitation is the problem. Those debates can be emotional, and emotions can make people feel like they are doing something while their money stays the same. Instead, I want you to look at a simpler logic. Labor produces value, but ownership captures it. In the traditional wage model, you earn for your time. In the ownership model, you earn for assets that create more value than they cost. That does not mean all ownership is moral. It does not mean all labor is exploited. It does mean the math works differently depending on where you sit in the value chain. Let's talk about a direct example from modern finance. When institutions buy real estate, they do not just buy a building. They buy leverage. They buy financing terms. They buy depreciation strategies. They buy property management systems. They buy the ability to refinance when rates move. They buy the option to hold through cycles. When an ordinary person buys a house, they often buy a monthly payment and a hope. Their leverage is high, but their flexibility is low. They cannot sell quickly without taking losses. They cannot refinance if rates are unfavorable. They are trapped by geography and by family needs. That is why the outcome differs. The technique of saving money is not enough to overcome the structural advantage of institutional access. Now, I am going to tell you something that will feel harsh if you have been raised with the idea that effort equals reward. Effort is necessary, but effort alone is not a strategy. If your effort only increases your wage, you remain dependent on someone else's balance sheet. If your effort increases your income stream through ownership and systems, you stop being dependent in the same way. Rich thinking is not about working less. It is about building a different pipeline so your time stops being the bottleneck. Now let's return to the hidden idea behind the original parable. The way is not a spiritual glow. It is a set of assumptions your mind makes about how money moves. Poor assumptions sound like, money comes from my paycheck. If I work hard, I will earn more. If I get promoted, I will be safe. Wealth assumptions sound like money comes from ownership. If I build assets, money grows even when I am not working. If I structure cash flow, I reduce my dependence on any single employer. Those assumptions are not always visible, but they shape decisions, and decisions determine results. Here is another micro story to make the point concrete. There is a young employee. He earns well enough to feel proud. He reads articles about personal finance. He invests in a retirement account. He does the right things, but he also carries high consumer debt. He buys premium brands because he wants to feel like he is winning. Then he gets hit with an emergency. Car repair, medical bill, job delay. Interest rates are still high, so credit is expensive. His savings disappears. He learns the wrong lesson. He decides he just needs to earn more, work more hours, and maybe he will be fine. What he never learns is this: Consumer spending is not always about joy. Sometimes it is about identity management. It is buying a feeling of capacity. It is a temporary anesthetic for insecurity. The wealthy do not always spend less because they are virtuous. They spend differently because they track cash flow and long-term purchasing power. They may buy luxury too, but they buy it while their assets keep paying them. Their spending does not threaten their survival. In the poor model, spending threatens survival. In the poor model, luxury is fragile, and that is why inflation feels so brutal. Inflation does not just raise prices, it punishes people who are living close to the edge. It punishes people who do not have buffers. It punishes people who do not own assets that hedge inflation. Pattern interrupt. Let's talk about retirement again because it is the slow-motion tragedy. In many countries, the retirement age keeps getting pushed back. Pensions are underfunded. Social security timelines are strained. Longevity rises, so the payouts get spread over more years. Meanwhile, global debt exceeds $300 trillion. That debt is not going away. It will be serviced, restructured, inflated, or shifted to consumers. So you get a political compromise. Delay retirement, reduce benefits, increase costs. People are told to be patient, but patience is not an investment strategy. Meanwhile, AI is accelerating a new class divide. There is the class that benefits from AI, who has either capital, a high-skill role, or ownership in the platforms. And there is the class that gets squeezed, who faces wage pressure, job task reduction, and increasing living costs. This is why the technique advice from earlier years often fails. In 2020, many people were told to learn to code, but in 2026, AI tools can write code, debug code, generate solutions, and